Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I am Calen Carpenter. Joined with me is my father, and I am tongue
Not
tied today.
esteemed,
Yeah,
not esteemed,
I'm just
nothing
gonna.
like that.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it as it is for today.
No sidekick today.
No, no. But today we're gonna be going over Preg testing, and before we do, if you are watching this on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe on Facebook, share, like, comment, spread the word across the board. We enjoy sharing what we're doing, and we're slowly building a following. If you guys ever have questions, comments, I'm not going to say concerns because we don't really do anything that involves concerns, but questions,
Not yet.
comments, not yet. I mean, until they start seeing us loading ourselves in the front end of a tractor and trying to put overheads on a sketchy way with the
You just tell
belt.
OSHA to stay home. There's no need for that.
Let's say that's probably the sketchiest thing we've done so far.
You know what? We should cover some things like that actually sometime
It's
about
not
some
a
of the things and your grandpa and his OSHA 16 extension cords.
yeah, yeah. No, I'll write that down because those are comical. But
That is
yeah.
a good one.
Anyway, back to the task at hand. We will be going over preg testing. So first thing is, what is it? When do we do it, and why? I think the big thing is, what is it? And essentially, it's pregnancy testing. It's seeing if your cows are open or if they've got calves in them. And I'll turn it over to you, Dad.
Well, and you're right. Open means simply, we also call it dry. Um, you know, for us in our industry, you want pregnant cows. If that's what you're raising, you don't want a dry cow, which means she won't have milk, or an open cow, which means she's open to breeding or being susceptible to a herd and open to conception. So there's a couple of terms there that maybe most people wouldn't be familiar with. If you're, college female and you come up open, that's probably a good thing, right? I mean, it's all about the context. So to be kind of crass, but it's what it is. We preg test because it's easier for us to manage the herd, and it's a cost efficiency type of thing. We could just not preg test and then wait until everybody's had a calf or not, and then you wonder, ooh, are they going to have a late calf, or are they going to not have a calf at all?
Which
Because you can't always tell.
as a quick insight, because I've never really thought of this until just now. How did you do it growing up? Did the grandpas, did they just kind of go with it, or were they starting to preg test then too? Like, when did that process start? Do you know?
God, they've been preg testing for years. That's a good question. I don't know
Yeah.
when preg testing really first started. I mean, it was something, obviously it was driven by the same need that we have now. Somebody said, I can't hold these cows. This is
Yeah.
stupid. If I have, say 100 head and only 90% of them are pregnant, I'm going to feed 10 cows. Well, 10 cows to feed over the winter is, you're looking at a substantial amount of money that is, you're just burning through a cow that's
Yeah.
going to produce zero for you. So that need, when that first started, I mean, was probably like any research or any scientific medical type industry is going to go, you know what, there's going to be a need for this. Let's develop how. And so really it's not changed a lot except for the appliance that's used. It used to be, you saw, we'll see on the film, Dr. Jim Felton, puts a long sleeve on, or just an OB sleeve,
Yep.
and you go in through the rectum, and you can reach in and go over the top of the pelvic wall, and they're feeling that uterus, or feeling the size and hardness of it, that kind of stuff, and see whether or not they're feeling through the intestine and feel if there's a calf there. And so they've developed that now, and it's been this way for quite a while, where they changed how you do that by using ultrasound, a great tool. And I'll tell you what, large animal vets get beat up. Their shoulders are shot, their arms are shot, because you get your arm deep into a cow, and she starts moving around. I mean, it is hard. You can pull ligaments, tendons, muscles, joints. I mean, it's not easy on you either. So, like Dr. Felton did a couple of these cows because they weren't conclusive. he couldn't
Nope. Looks like.
like the old way, and was able to find that the cow was in fact pregnant or had a calf. And one of them, I think he couldn't tell one way or the other, and then went in manually. He did it 2 or 3 times, as I recall. And one was, I think, both had calves in them, or I don't think the one that was dry was, or there was only 2 dries, which is really good numbers.
Yeah.
They, I think, were very conclusive, if I recall, that you know, the ones he had doubt about actually had calves in them. So, you know, it's just how do we do a lot of things in the medical field for years and years? You know, I mean, they started doing, you know, autopsies when that was a really, you don't desecrate, you know, a body, you know, several centuries ago. And some of the there's a Dutch painter, I think, that had a picture that he did of a medical school in the operating theater, where they had a cadaver there, and they're, you know, you just figure things out. It's about human curiosity that extends to cattle, you know, whatever other breeds, horses, you know, where there's a better way. There's a reason we can do this. So grandpas did that. I can't remember a time. There's been some times when we didn't, because like a certain herd was pretty small. And so you knew that if that bull was in there, he was going to cover that many cows. There's, I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to happen, or there's something wrong with it, especially stuff that's been proven. If you've already had a calf, good chance you're going to have another one. When the heifers are open, they don't get a second chance. There's probably something wrong with them. They're high fertility issue, or, you know, in the case of if we'd have kept one of the twins that was female, they're probably not going to breed. There's like a 92% chance that they're sterile. So they just go as a slaughter animal. You know, you're not going to reproduce, because you know, being with a twin, having all that testosterone going through the blood placenta is causing them developmental issues with fertility. So they're going to be sterile. You don't bother. But when doing it for a long time, long time, it's just a matter of efficiency, but just to know yes or no. Now they'll ask you if you want to age them as well, and you know, we don't bother with that, but there's good reasons for that.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense, probably for like bigger operations, but
well, dairy is another. The dairy industry is a really good reason why you would age them. Or I'm sorry, not age them, but sex them. And age them as well, because they're going to want to know when that cow is going to come out of production or going to come into production for milk. Yeah. If you have a Holstein, for instance, is generally what they have a lot, or most of our milk is from, because they're really high volume producers. But if you have a bull calf in as a fetus, and she has that calf, they're not really much you can do with them. I think that does feed some of the veal market, but veal in a whole different term than it used to be. But you can't do anything with them. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you can keep only so many bulls. There's a guy I knew that had met him, and he's from the Midwest, and said, "What do you do?" And he goes, "Oh, that's dairy." I said, "Really?" And I'd wonder. I said, "Hey, what do you do? What do you do with these Holstein steers when, you know, they preg test and you got a Holstein steer? What do you do?" And he goes, "I don't know." Thinking, well, that's kind of odd. He goes, let me ask my dad. So here's the sign of the times. He texts his dad, and his dad texts back. Jesus, does that sound familiar?
Yep.
And he says, "Dad, what do you do with Holstein steers?" And his dad simply wrote back and said, "Go broke." You know, so there's a very good reason, you know, why in some instances you would sex these animals. You know, if you're building a herd, you know, for us, it doesn't matter, because they're a commercial herd. They are not a registered herd. So you could pay attention if whether you had a bull or a heifer coming, you know, what you're going to do with that with your management.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I know we normally, I guess probably everybody does typically. Well, I don't know. So when do we do it? We do it after we send the calves to sale. and just before kind of winter starts to settle in. But I
Yeah,
guess other people might do it at a different time based off of what their herd cycle is too, I guess.
yeah, they can do that. Generally, we've always preg tested when the calves are gone. It's a matter of managing a herd. Now you got half as many cattle to
Right.
deal with, and you're not stressing those calves before sale. You stress them enough as you send them to sale. So there's no reason to bring everything in, stress those calves, stress the cows with them, and do it. So we normally go sometime after we pray or after we go to sale with our calves. Now, you can't do it or you can do it too early, right? You need 45 days or so, is probably okay. Anything over 30, but the closer you get to the conception date, the higher false reading that you could get, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
makes
you got to
sense.
look a little higher. I mean, you're going to see on one of the videos here a ultrasound of the calf in there, and there's no doubt there's a calf, right? Well, when you starting out small from a sperm hitting an egg, and creates a blastosphere. I mean, you can't find that, so you have to have time go by. And for us, some of these cows were 120 days, and I never asked him to age them or sex them. It just, are they pregnant or not? Because I know when we put the bulls in, we know when we took the bulls out. So we
Yeah.
have a window there that we just follow through that. It's and like he said, he doesn't really sex them because he's not very good at it. He says I'm just not that great at it. And you need to be somewhere in that 60, 65 to 75 day pregnant before it's really valuable for trying to sex a calf.
Okay. Yeah, I think with that, we'll just go to the video real quick.
Spinal cord. If she'd only. He's swimming around in there. He's bashful.
There he is. There's a
There's a heart.
heartbeat. Look at that. That's good. And it's a he, you
And
said.
there, you can see front legs
Yep.
coming off there.
Yes, you can.
We aren't deep enough to get to the head, but
Nice. All right, nice and healthy when they're moving.
Okay, so now after watching that, he talked about the spinal cord, seeing some of the ribs, the front legs, and then
The heartbeat was in there too, right? I mean,
yeah, the heartbeat.
so you can see where you actually got a calf that's alive,
Right, and
they move.
right. Well, it's like a human baby too on an ultrasound,
Yeah.
but I guess, and I don't remember hearing it, but I saw in one of the videos that you shared this week, he said something about it's a he, and you made it sound like he might have sexed it. Did he sex that particular one or no?
He didn't. It was more like a, hey, you guys,
Oh,
want to
okay,
go do
yeah.
this? Right. So
That's what I thought. I just wanted
yeah,
to,
it was just a generic. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and I was being my normal smart self, and I said, "Oh, you can tell," because and then that led us into, well, I'm not, later on off camera. He said, "Yeah, I'm not really good at sexing these. It has to be 65, 70 days, 60, 70 days, somewhere in there." And so, yeah, I was just being smart with him, because we got a great guy. We got kind of a good relationship that way, where we can tease each other and make fun of other people, and like you. And
I mean, it's
and
not
then
hard to make fun of me, so
well, then he makes fun of me to the crew that's there, and so that was all right. It's just all good fun.
yeah, and
So
that's
just totally
fun
a
too.
generic.
That I was gonna say that's something too that I think a lot of people don't appreciate is a lot of people that aren't in the livestock community, they don't appreciate the relationship that you have with your vet. Like there's definitely a very tight bond there, and they have a lot of people that they help out, but you
Oh
always
yeah,
have a very unique and tight knit bond with your vet. And if you don't, you probably there's something probably wrong with what's going on.
yeah. Either you've got a vet that's not very personable, or they're taking life too serious, or you're just a jerk. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, but what will you pay for a vet to be there when you need him in an emergency?
Right. Cool.
That's why you always make things easy for your vet. I want those cattle sorted, and so the vet never waits on you, and I don't want them waiting
Yeah.
on us putting a cow up in the chute. And sometimes we get some help they don't understand these nuances of what's polite and what's the right thing to do. So you as soon as you get your bill, you pay your vet. You know, they got overhead, they got, like everything else, their time. And so you don't wait for them to sort cattle to come in, or gather cattle, for God's sakes, if you're still gathering. Oh, Jesus. And then you got to sort everybody, get them lined out, get them up the chute, get your crew going. I mean, you'd never let that happen where a vet's waiting on you. I mean, that's just a cardinal sin. That and a brand inspector the same way. I try really hard not to do that. Now, you'll notice one of the other things is in the shot, which we never see generally, is there's a tractor pulled up there alongside the chute, and it's on the upwind side because we were forecasted to have some pretty heavy winds that morning, and it never happened, thank God, because it was about 15 degrees when we started sorting, gathered and sorting. And so I just had Braden pull that trailer or tractor up there and try to block some wind for the vet. You know, you try to make them as comfortable as possible. Yeah. So you want them to come back, is my point.
Yeah. You brought up two good points too, is the time and then safety, because I think they both go up hand in hand, because I've seen vets like Vicky, she would be banged up and she's hobbling around with an arm in a sling or something like that, still doing her job. And that takes up more time for them. It also takes away money from them. And then on top of that, it just makes things more difficult for all parties involved. So having things as safe as possible for them, and then making sure everything's laid out and prepped for them to just roll up, do their job, and then leave. I've noticed that we have a pretty good working relationship with all of our vets. Part of that's because of your personality, but I think a lot of it's just they understand the business part, where we always make sure to try and put them first, so they're not always waiting on us.
Right. Well, you remember what Vicky used to call me, though? I mean,
oh yeah, it was always derogatory cussing words that were typically 4 letters or less.
Yeah, and I thought, my God, the first few times that she did that, I didn't really know her.
Yeah.
Dr. Vicky Bokum, who's since she passed away several years ago now.
Yeah.
Great vet, but had the bedside personality of like a mad bulldog.
Yeah, it was horrible.
But she was very, very good. And the first few times I used her, I considered never using her again, because I thought she was just growly and grumpy. And I was like, and then the next time I used her, I thought, well, we'll give her a chance. We need her, and she does a good job. I can overlook some of that. I don't have the greatest personality either all the time. So I'm thinking, so she leaves, and as she leaves, she goes, goodbye, executive. And I went, what did I do? And then I happened to be talking to a friend of ours that really has used her a lot, and we're friends with her. And I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing with her, but I don't want to cause a problem. And he said, did she call you? And I went, yeah. And he goes, she likes you. And I went, what? She only calls people that if she likes them. And I'm like, okay, that's a little different and strange, but I mean, we don't have that kind of relationship like you do with some dude,
Right.
And so once I got that figured out, it was kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, you have the best relationship with them you possibly can, because you want them to come back, and you make their stay there as comfortable as possible. I have rebuilt those chutes.
So I saw that. They look awesome.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I've wanted for a while too.
Yeah. Right. And so you have to do that. And it's all about safety. The older I get, the more about safety I am, because being banged up isn't fun.
Yeah.
It's counterproductive, and it's certainly non-productive for a vet when they, get an arm in a sling and can't do their job. I mean, that's horrendous. I mean, what do you do? So you always want them to be able to know that, oh, okay, they got a decent set of corrals, they got a decent chute. This is going to be an easy day for me, or, I'm not going to fight this. It shouldn't take twice as long as it normally should. And then the last thing that I did, and I asked him early on, I said, the most important thing of the day is, did you bring a lunch? Because we got food for you afterwards. We always offer, always feed everybody. And of course, he had another appointment to go to, which, again, if you're holding things up and he's late for another appointment, that's never good either. Right. So if you're taking somebody who's got maybe 100 head of cattle like us to do, we had less pregnant cows to do than that. I mean, say all of them were pregnant, they're not, but you go to some place who's got maybe 200 or 300 head to do, and you're holding them up to go to something that can pay 3 times as much. that's not a good business thing for them. So anyway, it's trying to make that relationship good and keep everything whole and let them do their job and get out there and look, we're all trying to make a living and scratch out a living, and it's all about whether we got a chunk of gold in a leather bag or not, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess the to kind of wrap it up, that we already went over the why, but you kind of started going towards the end result. We had, I think you said only 2 out of the 69 head were dry or open, and they didn't have a calf. So
Right.
what's the result with them? Are you keeping either of those 2, or are they both going to town, or is one going to town? What's ended up happening with that?
Well, and that also that question is good. The answer to that is also why we wait until after we've already shipped our calves, because now you can take that cow or cows and decide, am I going to give them another chance? Am I going to keep them another year, feed them, or are they going to go to town post haste? And one of the cows, she was 13.
Oh, so it's time for her to go.
It's time for her to go.
End of the
She
life
was
cycle.
still she's still in good shape, but at 14, that's an old. I mean, she's at 13, she's an ancient cow, but that's partly because of what we're doing with our practices. We're not breeding these heifers as yearlings. We're breeding them as 2, so they calve at 3, and we get some longevity out of them. But the other cow was a cow we had purchased a couple 3 years ago, I think, and she was dry. And like, you know what? I'm not gonna hold on to you, because as I'm riding through these cows after the fact and watching, I'm looking at the shape they're in, and these calves draw these cows down. If they look a little skinny on the hip bones, it's because those calves are taking the life right out of these cows, and they're putting everything they can into producing milk for them. And these calves are obnoxious. I mean, they are just obnoxious. They decide to feed, they'll stop that cow and they'll bang their bag with their face, and I mean, they want fed now. I mean, they're just jerks.
Yeah.
So, and some of these cows will put their entire lives in for these calves, so they get thin towards the fall, and now it's time to feed them well and kick them up. But both of those cows went to town, because I looked at the ones we bought versus what we raise and keep as replacements, and our cattle are in better shape. I hate to say it. Well, I don't hate to say it. I mean, it's like you want to make a good purchase, but you're like, you know what? God, maybe we shouldn't have purchased them. They've paid for themselves now, but should I have just went ahead and ate it for another year and not brought in some other bloodlines and just done bloodline changes with our bulls? Yeah, maybe. But you learn. A lot of times you're buying somebody else's problem, where they don't want to stay home, or they're honky, or don't produce a decent calf. But we've been okay with these.
And another thing too is, that 13-year-old, she had a calf last year. That's why she was still around. So you knew she was getting towards the end of her life cycle anyway. So looking for next year, do you have any older cows that are like 12 or 13 right now or even 11 that you were like, maybe we should just sell them as a bred cow?
Yeah, there are. I've already identified some that, based on how they look now and their calf's condition, then this will be their last year. So I've already got the numbers, 12, 20, 24, and 40. Those 4 calves right off the top of my head will probably go. Probably number 27 and number 39, they might have to go as well. So we'll see how they do.
And but you're saying you're going to keep those cows. You're not going to sell them right now as a bred cow, because that, like, I think people forget that you can also say, I'm just going to cut my loss. Either something happens where it's getting to be an older cow. What if something does occur where both the cow and the calf don't survive during calving time? What about if they get drawn down so much over the winter that they abort the calf? It goes back to all the little intricacies of the what ifs. And what could happen with cold weather, natural causes, stuff like that. So you said you're going to keep all the cows. You're not going to sell any of them as a bred cow at all?
Yeah, we'll keep them. We'll keep these because they're all some of our older stock that we've used as seed stock for our replacements.
Yeah,
every one of those that I mentioned. So I will keep them this one last year, and then chances are very good that we won't even preg test them. We'll go to town with them right after we sell the calves. There's that interim where I did that. I think there were 6 head that went this year.
Yeah,
I wasn't even going to preg test them. It's why waste the preg testing on an animal that you're not going to keep anyway? So you've already identified them. But yeah, and it brings up a good point. Is that cow bred when you take her in to sell her, or is she open? And what you can do is make a little bit more money on a bred cow.
Right.
So they will ask you that when you bring them in. Says, is this a weigh up cow? Which means, is she just go based on her weight sell, or is she got a calf in her? Is she preg tested? So, both of these were dry. But yes, you could make that decision. It's like, what's the cattle market doing right now on bred cattle? And these would be considered older, called broken mouth, where
Right.
they don't have great teeth. They're going to lose weight because they're older. And so you could make a little bit more on that as a pair. But if you got a cow that is producing a calf that's pretty healthy, you might want to keep her and keep that as a replacement. So that's the kind of that, what do I do? Right. And so you have to make that decision. But I think we're going to be okay. There's maybe one cow that I'm keeping that probably shouldn't, but we'll make that decision here too, because I can always take her to town later.
Yeah.
She got a calf in her. If she doesn't pick up or she starts to not do as well, then I can sell her and say, okay, she's not going to produce a good calf. We know based on her body condition. So there's always that too. And there's that end of it.
It just ties back into, you're constantly reevaluating, because everybody's going kind of to the auction yards at one time in this particular part of the year, it doesn't mean you can't do it again later. Like,
right.
It's not like there's a steadfast rule where you can't do that. So
right. No, I think they take like the Christmas week off. They don't have any sales at the stockyards, but they're always bringing cattle in. Yeah. So it's going to be there. They just may not have the volume in some of the, February, March. A lot of people hold their cattle till after January if they can, if they got the feed in place to go with them, because hopefully the price comes up after the big rush of the fall, which is smart to do if you can do that.
Well, and look at it socially. I would say we're a Christian nation, so the majority of our people are going to spend Christmas to New Year's probably going out and getting, unfortunately, beef is becoming more of a luxury item I think it is. I was looking at the store the other day, and it's really upsetting me because I had to go buy a bunch of beef, and it was way more expensive than I wanted it to be. But
well, we've already talked about why that partially is too.
And if anybody's interested, they can go into some of the in the shoot conversations we've got on YouTube. But
yeah,
I think that leading into kind of what you're saying with the sales though after the New Year's is, as a Christian nation, we're probably going to spend more money for those nice like prime rib during Christmas or New Year's or something like that, and everybody's going to have those roasts and whatnot, and then it means, oh, now we need more beef into the supply chain, so then there's a potential for sales to come up a little bit. But
well, there is, but you've also got to remember what you're seeing on a shelf in a grocery store or a butcher shop, that animal left a ranch 18 to 24 months ago.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a long lag because of what it takes to finish something. And in anything where you're a producer, there's always that lag time from the time it left you till the time it's available for somebody, if you're not part of that middle chain. And a lot can happen in between those times. You get a
pandemic,
big giant weather events we've talked about, political winds change, trade agreements change. I mean, there's all kinds of things that take place. So, and then when you got the Packers screwing you, in the middle of that, I'm still mad.
Just bite the pillow.
Yeah, I've got this deep-seated anger. The shock has wore off. I'm going through the stages of grief after selling these cows. These calves. We've talked about that, but the shock is kind of gone. Still a little bit sick to my stomach, but now I'm mad, and I'm staying mad, and I can't do anything about it. So, but it's just that's how emotionally involved we get with these animals and with what we do. I mean, it's not something we do, it's who we are. Right. And that's when you start to assault that. And I look at that like that, these people are doing it. They don't give two hoots in hell about us. They really don't. So,
or the next guy down the road, or the other guy down the road from him. Yeah.
Right. Even some of your neighbors that don't understand, they don't get it. And I don't think I don't think people are outside of being a producer where you produce something, which there's not a lot of our population that is, understand that this is something you create, and we haven't created it, we've managed it really, but you still have that emotional bond to, this is what we started with, and this is what we're making or producing for consumption. And there's a lot goes into that. You're every day, you're literally, sometimes it's blood, sweat, certainly, and sometimes there's some tears involved, you know, and you can't separate yourself from that. I don't know how you could if you really care about it.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of hit on a point too. Like last week when I was coming back from Mississippi, somebody in the vehicle made a comment about, you know, the cattle industry is making so much money. I was like, okay, hold on a second. Yeah. I was like,
did you stop the car and get out and fight them?
Just about. I was like, let's take a second here, buddy.
But
I
it's not their fault. They don't understand, right?
Yeah. And what was thankful is in the vehicle with me was a cook, and he's also from Nebraska. Really? And his family is in the cattle industry, and he goes, all right, we both of us were about, all right, let's but we settled down, and I was like, all right, hey, listen, man, like there's a process, and the nice thing was that you and I had talked about this already, so it was nice that I already had this kind of preformed in my head. And I told him, I was like, listen,
right,
there's kind of like that triangle, and what's weird is that the packers are really screwing everybody on both sides, and what they're doing is
including the producer or including the consumer.
Yeah. And that's what I told them. I was like, they're trying to get bare bottom costs, and we have to take it as the producer, the wholesale producer, and it goes through the process. And I walked them through the process, and it comes to them, and then on the bottom end they charge the crap out of everybody pulling them, buying the actual product, and they're marking it up sometimes 400-500%. And that's why you're getting such high costs. So what they're doing is they're doing exactly what you do as a capitalist, but they're doing it in a sense that's, I would argue, unethical, and it's also taking away from ultimately the population at large. But they're squeezing everything they can to get the lowest amount that they need for their product, which is what you do in capitalism, so you can get the biggest margin of profit. But the problem is with the profit is they're also marking it up significantly. It's not like, hey, a dollar here, dollar there to try and get, a little bit more money back into your system. It's thousands of dollars. They're throwing stuff up there, and it's causing what we're starting to see. And I hope people get pissed off enough to go on both sides as the consumer and the producer, and we can come together and be like, listen, this needs to stop.
Well, and you're right about the 400 to 500% profits, but those were 4 to 5 in the last couple of years, 400 to 500% increases in the profit they already had.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point to me.
Yeah. What is a normal business? Say, what's a lumber yard? What do they hope to make in overhead or beyond their overhead and make profit? 10, 15%.
And that seems reasonable. Yeah. Most
businesses are in that. These guys are 400 and 500% increases above what they were already making.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why, of course, again, I think I've said this in a political year. You've had some governmental, senatorial, congressional type inquiries in the packer, but you know what?
Haven't done anything.
I don't trust those guys either. There's some that I think highly of as far as their abilities, but you know what? When it comes down to it, I don't think anything will be done.
Yeah, I think we'll just stop there because I'm getting more upset and I have more things to say. But,
welcome to my anger fest.
Yeah, well,
hey, look at the ghost behind me. Look who just showed up.
Oh, did my mother show up?
She did. Now she's leaving. She skulked away and she's not coming back.
So I think what we'll do now, we're just a little over halfway. We'll go into kind of the process and the workflow. So before we do that, I'm gonna pause this and we'll insert the workflow clip of Braden working the shoot.
All right, Brady's gonna give a vaccination. She's bred. Release and throw another one in here. And we got some There we go.
You live in Billings?
Yeah, I'm living with them now.
Oh my.
There we go. Yeah, we'll see if the doc usually gives us a good sign. Yep, that was subtle. There we go. So we get the last one. We got 2 drives out of 69 head. That's a pretty good, that's a real good average there. So now we're gonna vaccinate, change a tag on this girl, and we're done with this part.
All right, so we just finished watching that workflow, and what I liked was, I don't know who was in the back, but you had somebody pushing up the chute, and the way you've got the chute set up right now, it was really easy. So you only had a couple people working. It wasn't like a giant crew, and they came right in, got in the head catch. Braden was able to vaccinate, do what he needed to do with the, it looks like retagging on some of the select people or the select animals, and then the vet was able to at the time simultaneously do the ultrasound, and it was really quick and fast. I mean, that was only a minute clip, and you were able to get a cow through that pretty rapidly.
Yeah, well, and there was a little bit of a delay there too, because again, you don't want to have the vet waiting on you.
Yeah.
We got a new head catch there, and I think you said you had not used it yet.
Yeah,
we've
I'm
had
used
it
to
for
the
a
one
couple
where
years.
it's like a guillotine. You have your arm way up here on this thing, and as soon as their head pops through, you crank it down, and it just, all it does is it just squeezes on their neck. It's not going to kill
Yeah.
them or anything, but
Well, and I've got that one actually. I moved it into the barn so that if we have to pull a calf in the barn, we can do it, out of the elements and some, a lot better warmth abilities. There's all kinds of good reasons. But anyway, we purchased this one. It's a used one, but it's a great head catch. But you'll notice when he first went in, I think we had Braden was vaccinated, opened the chute, and it allowed him to walk out, and then he reset it so that they walk into it, hits their shoulders are hitting it, and they come forward. Well, they felt that one felt a little bit, and there's a catch where it locks. And so it's really important that good communication takes place between whoever's on that head catch and your vet or everybody around you. She backed out, wasn't quite caught on that side, and was able to open it up and back up. Well, if the vet would have been in there, he could have gotten crushed against that alley gate that he opens up so he can get in behind her. So, she went back in. That takes time. That wastes time.
yeah. Well,
Same way with.
It was good on the vet too, because he's been around cattle enough that he saw her, and he just kind of tapped her on the back end, and she went, "Oh, okay," and went right in. But
yeah, and we don't manhandle or beat our cattle.
No.
I want them to be able to not be afraid of us. But yeah, you got your cousin Aaron was in the working the chute and keeping him up there, and your uncle was in the crowd tub. So they're trying to move them in, and they don't understand behavior that great. And you try to explain things, but I think they get excited and they try to push too many cattle in, and your cousin's not worried or thinking about, that's waiting on us. It's about, okay, well, if one comes up here, I'll get it, instead of making it happen,
Yeah.
So
well, that's all right.
There was a little bit of a delay there. It was still quick, but there was a little bit of a delay. Bray vaccinated. Could you hear the vet? It was very subtle about whether or not.
Yeah, if anybody want, I think if the audio should come through when I put it up here, but yeah, he'll go, "Hey!"
He goes, "Bread," which is good because it lets everybody know. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
And when we're doing that, and I've had different vets. Dr. Parks is very quiet. She'll go, "She's good," or "Ooh, no, she's dry." And so I'm like, you gotta listen for it. And I've been around. There was a vet, I'll never forget this, was helping your great uncle, like my grandpa's brother, and he was working for an outfit and Preg Testing. And this vet, when he found a calf and he was doing old manual palpation, and this was in the early 80s, and a cow was with a calf, he'd go, "Yogi dogi diddly doo." Some of them just have, little things that they do. And so I was being smart with Dr. Jim Felton. I said, so how accurate are you on sex? And he goes, "I'm 100%. And he'd earlier told me, he says, well, I'm not that good at it. I said, how are you 100%? He says, because if they ask me right here, I will tell them it's a bull. He says, but I will write down on my records that it's a heifer, because that way I'm covered either way. And if they say, hey, wait a minute, you said that was a bull, he goes, let me check my reference. No, I'm right here. I wrote down heifers. So, it's little games you play, what the heck.
But like my point though with the work process, and this is where, and this will be something we definitely talk about in the springtime, but the Super Bowl on the ranch, everybody's ranch is always branding time. And how do you brand? Do you wrangle, which is, catch them with a rope and you hold them down and you brand them, take care of what you need to take care of and let them go? Or do you go through the chute? We've always done the chute. I've been to a lot of places where it's the chute, and there's been times where I like being in the chute and pushing. That's just, I grew up doing that, so I enjoy doing it. But there's been
your
times,
responsibilities and your brother's responsibilities have increased and need to increase, because I'm not getting any younger. And you know what? Who knows? I could croak at any time.
Just hold out for another 3 years. I got some time. I still got
three more years is all I got to go. What if I do this right now?
I mean, if you do 4, that'd be nice, because then I get a nice year to learn it. But anyway, my point was, like, there's been shoots and stuff that I've been in where it's just like, oh, like him and I are working as a team to work around obstacles that are there.
Right.
Either the way it was set up or the way they want things done, because it's their place. You go by their rules.
Or no maintenance.
Or no maintenance, and you're trying to just you're trying to get through it, and you are working your butt off to get it through fast, because the same thing, you're trying to get them in the chute. Well, we would queue up calves, 6 at a time, depending on how long the lane is, and have them ready to go in. So the next thing, they just open it up, the next one's in, and just feeding it. And that struggle it can be difficult if you don't know what you're doing or you're not practiced. But my point being, like you're saying, the helpers that we have, they're not the most experienced, and that's okay. That's not a problem.
Right.
But they're help, and that's much appreciated. But the fact that you have a process, and the way that we've got the corral set up, and you've spent so many years fixing that, because it was a disaster when I was growing up, and getting the right alleyways and everything, so it's a nice flow. It makes things so much easier, because you can have reserves where you have to refill the crowd tub, and it's not like a process where you have to stop everything and start over. It's an easy
have to
flow.
stop.
Right. But it's an easy flow where, you get, hey, go open this gate, and all you got to do is say open and close, and typically things can flow by themselves without much extra help.
Yeah, and a vet they understand. You got to reload a crowd tub, right? Yeah. Or that we got a holding area prior to the round crowd tub that's just a big half circle, and you have to refill that. That's okay. But we also fill that from the alleyway that we fill, and then you got the pen at the end of that. So we've got some ability to do that. But my instructions are always to whoever's running the crowd tub and the chute, to keep a good workflow, is when that vet opens that door and to go across the alley, that tells you that cow ahead of them is caught. They're going to work on them, but you can bring a cow into that, and you need to have that thing filled. Make sure that you have at least one cow sitting there, because what'll happen is we'll wait one in the chute, then we will open that, he'll open that alley gate, step out, open it up, and that cow that's in the chute will see the one that's in the head catch. And as you release them, they walk forward. They're much more likely to follow and walk right up there. And that helps create more of a workflow as well. So, but when that's not filled, now you have to take a cow they've been through this chute before, but not today. Typical cow.
Yep.
Right. So that kind of holds that workflow up. And if they're not being really diligent about keeping that filled, then you got a problem. Or we had some cows in chute at one point, or in the crowd pen to fill the crowd tub, and there was probably 3 or 4 left. And instead of filling that up and letting them go, the one, your uncle, just kind of stopped, and he went down and started filling that thing up. I was like, no, so I had to go from the head catch to get in and do that. But 2 things would have slowed us up more, and one did, and that was the ear tag, because we're running older cows. Some of these ear tags are very difficult to read, and when you need to read them is during calving season, when that cow's pretty honky or can be pretty protective of that calf, and you can't always see it. Hair gets in the way.
Yeah.
from their ears. So I said, you know what, some of these, and I don't know that they're making these ear tags any better either, honestly. I said, so these that need to be changed, we're going to put new ear tags in. We're going to cut the old ones out and just replace them. It's going to hurt the cow. It just goes through basically like an earring hole for anybody else, And so we did that, which slowed up things up a little bit. But the other thing we didn't do, because it was cold, is we didn't apply a strip of wormer down their back after we vaccinated. Otherwise, we'd be completely done. But now we need to go back and bring everybody in and worm them. And like I talked to Dr. Felton about it. I said, hey, what do you think? It's going to warm up? And he goes, well, yeah, it's an alcohol-based, carrier for this thing that takes care of all different kinds of parasites and lice. And he said, the colder it is, the less it seems to work. And so it's like, all right, we'll wait. We'll bring him in again. It's more labor. It's another day, but less of us can do it. We can run that thing. And actually we could run everything with 2 people. If it was you and your brother, one of you on the head catch and doing everything you needed to do there with a vet, and one of you in the back pushing cattle up, you could do that with 2 people and a vet. So it's pretty efficient, but it does take a little bit longer, because if your brother's on the head catch and he gives a new ear tag while I'm vaccinating after we hear a bread sign from the vet, and then he can, when he's done with that, or I'm done with it, then you can just, one of you grab the applicator and put the wormer solution on him, and you're done. And you get that workflow going. Yeah, it goes fast and very efficient. The most important thing is to have a cow in that chute ready to go. That's the most important part, as everything slows up tremendously if you can't get a cow to walk up that chute. Obviously you can't work on them, right? So it's so important to have that part done. And like when you guys were kids pushing stuff up a chute, seems like it's the nastiest, worst job, but you know what?
It definitely is. You get stuff all over you.
But it's one of the most important jobs for the workflow.
Yeah. No, it's one of those. That's partly why I think I enjoyed it so much, is because I knew there was a significant responsibility behind it. But the other thing too is, if nobody's been up at the head catch at significant events on the ranch, like, it doesn't matter where you are, it's chaos at times, and that's where it takes, sometimes there's been strong personalities that, hey, I need you to do this, just stick to this, and it helps keep the flow going. But then there's been other times where there are not strong personalities, and it's a mad dash for whoever can get to whatever first, and then you start getting worried about, okay, is this safe? Because people, if you're doing old school castration, you got a knife just walking around. Other times you got vaccines with a giant gauge needle ready to poke into somebody, like, whoa, watch me on that one, I don't want to get hit. Or branding iron, but then that's the other thing too, hold the branding iron up so it doesn't hit anybody.
Especially when you're in a chute, you're doing one animal at a time. When you're using a calf table, like we've shown on some of the Facebook stuff, but and we'll do that again this spring. That's why it's important for whoever's going to be the chief that day, needs to just make sure, say, hey, would you do this? Could I get you to do this? Do you feel comfortable doing this job?
Yeah.
And that's their job. And then you show them how, and you got to watch if they're doing it wrong or something's not right, then help them out, because they may not know how to problem solve something, right? The other thing to that, or
you get the people that you can trust, you give them the look, because I've definitely gotten the look a couple of times, like, all right, I'm on it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Your brother and I exchanged the look a couple of times this last week, and of course I caught your mother and your brother exchanging the look about me, because me and the vet we're just
of course, yeah, it's like, let's get this rolling. Yeah.
Well, they didn't have a decision on a certain ear tag, and it's like, you're big kids, figure it out, make the decision. I don't have to make every decision, but it's important that you put people in places that they can do the job, that they're strong enough. There's an evolution that takes place when you're wrestling cattle during branding. If you're going to wrestle and have wrestlers, and you got 2 or 3 sets of them, and you got a couple of guys roping, an evolution takes place where old men normally don't wrestle calves. Because
old men are like typically 40 and older. Like, I've noticed. It's the 30-year-olds. It's typically the 20-year-olds that are like, I'm feeling turkey today, let's do it. And then they're the ones that are also drinking beer and just like, almost falling
Right.
asleep at lunchtime. Like
Well, that's why you don't feed beer at a branding until it's all done.
yeah.
I have seen some wrecks on some places. I mean, don't even want to go there, but
Well, I
maybe
mean,
that's
that's
something else
just
we can talk
that's
about.
the other. Yeah, I think we can probably talk about that. But alcohol in general, we don't use around animals, and once we do,
No,
the day's done.
it's after the fact. That's right. And I got nothing against it. I like my beer. I like drinking whiskey too, but there's a time and a place for it. And it's about whether or not that animal is safe and people are safe. But this evolution I'm talking about, yeah, usually, if you were in high school, or even when I was in junior high school, of course I was wrestling calves when I was, little, when the calves were way bigger than me, and I got, I've been kicked in the face, and it
Oh yeah.
shows.
Yep.
But I mean, it happens. But as you get older and a little more skilled, then you get to start roping a little bit, and you'll get to rope as a kid. They'll say, okay, go get your rope. And you're like, really? I finally get a rope, And so you get to drag in, and you might get to drag in, 6, 8 calves. Okay, you're done, go back to wrestling. But it's about giving you some experience as a kid. And then typically, the strong guys or very experienced people, you don't have to be big to wrestle a calf, but you got to know what you're doing, because they will, even a small calf can just pack off a 200-pound man easily, right? If you let them get their feet under.
Sometimes those are the ones that are actually the hardest, because
sometimes
they're a little slicker, and they're fast, and they're just full of energy, and they're hard to keep down.
Or the really big ones, which a lot of times you just leave a rope on both hind feet if you can. But anyway, and then you'll see, usually the owner will brand, or somebody who he really trusts to brand. Castration is another one, that is somebody who he expects, that knows what they're doing, and can trust them. And if they band them, that's a job that usually, someone smaller or not as strong can do, because of the type of implement that you're using. It's just squeezing it down like a pair of spring-loaded pliers to open up that rubber band. But people that vaccinate typically are some of the ladies that are not as strong, or guys that are older men that are beyond branding. They can't brand anymore, or they can't do it quickly, or could get hurt. So there's an evolution that takes place from, the baby to the old man, and the jobs are appropriate for them so that people don't get hurt. But you know what? You want people to be able to feel like they're useful, if they have contributed positively to what you're doing, and maybe learn something along the line too.
I was gonna say, sometimes we also have like mom or grandma or somebody doing records, and that's a huge help, because I don't have time to be writing stuff down. I need you guys
that's
to,
right. And record keeping is important. And I've never been to a place yet that you didn't have. And I've seen hash marks on a piece of cardboard. I've seen hash marks on a corral fence, because they didn't plan to go, we're gonna do it anyway. So somebody's got a pencil, and they're literally got heifers and steers, and they're keeping track. And then off to the side, if something comes up, you need to watch something, then they're writing it down. I mean, literally on, on the corral board. Cardboard works great. I mean, there's been all kinds of things that happen like that. So.
Yeah, I think the work process and the flow looks good, and I can't wait to actually help him do that. So maybe this upcoming year I will be there, but hopefully the year after that I can be there for branding, because I love branding. That's my favorite time. But
yeah, I like branding time. It's springtime. Calving is done. All these calves are ready to go to pasture, and it's a hard work portion of the year that is kind of put to rest. And now you just kind of maintain these animals. But yeah, you can like this head catch. I think how it works, and we can actually get a bull, and those bulls fill up that chute.
They squeeze.
Yeah, well, the other head catch, a bull couldn't get through there. You'd hip lock, and so this one, the way it's designed, the doors open up and they can walk right through it. It's really nice, and it does not freeze. If you get, the other one, that would freeze up on the bottoms. You get a little dirt or some water, some snow. Yeah, that would freeze. This one will not do that. It's up high enough, and the design's great that it just pivots. It's nice. I'm happy with this purchase.
The other thing too that I like is you set up the side of the gate, and you did this several years ago with essentially the it's almost like a suicide door if you were to look at it like a car, and you pull the side panel out. So if they can't, because I think that was primarily for the big bull, you did do something like that because you're like, well, we can't get him through the head catch, we need him to get out anyway, and so you
Well,
opened it to the side so he can just back up and release.
well, actually, a lot of those bulls, the older bulls, you can't get that head catch because their necks are so big and thick that you can't. If you did pinch it down, they'll just back right out of it because their necks are bigger than their heads. So really what that was for is just when I designed that, most squeeze chutes, and we don't have a squeeze chute, we just have a head catch. Most squeeze chutes have the ability to open up one side of it. And so I just wanted to mimic that in case you get an animal that goes down, and I have to pull a calf in that chute or like that, where you can open that up, open the head catch, and you can get them out and they can get out. It's just an emergency escape, and for anything, it doesn't matter what it is. And that's really what it was designed for. And it works pretty well. I don't think I've had to use that really but once or twice, because sometimes these calves or the cows, you'll watch them, they'll come up to that and they know what's going to happen. They're going to get caught because they've been through the chute enough times. And what they'll try to do is they'll try to go under it, particularly if they're younger, and they'll get down on their knees and they'll try to duck under what they think they can get under this, being caught, and they'll get down on their knees and they're stuck and you've got their head caught. And then sometimes they'll go, oh, and they'll lay down. Well, if you don't have that ability to get that open, because you can open the chute, and if they get themselves sideways, you're in a bind. And
and especially if you've got cows in the queue and they're coming, because then they're also trying to push the other one in front of them, and it gets to be a stack up. We've had a couple of them try to jump over the other. It's just it gets to
right, especially if you're not preg testing where you're doing one at a time, where you can load that chute up for 3 or 4 head anyway, and then you can worm them all at the same time, just run down their backs. But sometimes they'll pile up and it can be a mess. So having an escape door like that is always important, I think.
I agree. Seeing the stuff that you've built over the time, I think it's worked out. But
well, that's nothing that I come up with. I mean, these are things that have happened out of necessity that you go, this is a good idea if we do this. Let's just do this. It's going to take some more time and money, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you came up with it or not. The fact that you got the plans drawn up and then we actually executed, like, I was just happy because it's just like I said, over time, especially with the corrals, like they used to be a mess. And maybe we've got some old pictures that we can look at before and kind of now, because it's so much better for everything, like horses and cows, and depending on what the situation is, it's just easier to move things around. Well,
and when I was a little boy, I was 5-6 years old, I played in those corrals because that's what you did. It was all over, and they were all wood plank and wood post, and the chute for calving actually faced towards the south, and you would run everything down that chute, and it's like, now you don't do that. I mean you can if you got a sun shining and try to move a cow down a chute that's facing into the sun, good luck. I mean, you can do it, but it's a pain. So this is all done so that everything turns and you're facing north, so the sun's not an issue. You're not facing into the, it'd be nice if everything was under cover, but you're not going to do that, get out of the weather. But those corrals were completely different than they are now, which is a vast improvement. A lot of metal in them now. There's a lot of money in metal in those corrals that we've taken over the last 20 years really to kind of get them to where they're almost completely, I think, really done. I got to do some maintenance, but that's normal.
Right. All right. I think with that, we'll just bring it all together. Letting everybody know next week we're going to try and have this open Zoom call so everybody can join in. I think we'll probably be limited to 49 callers because that's how Zoom works. I don't know if we'll get that many. I doubt it. But anybody who wants to comment or just enjoy the show with us and ask questions, we love questions because then we can go down tangents. We both tend to do that really well. So having comments to spur that would be even better. But yeah.
Well, the other thing of that is that there's a lot of things that we just take for granted, and I don't even think that it's something that and somebody will ask, oh, geez, okay, which is kind of nice. But what time? Give us our Central to Pacific times that we would.
I'll start with Eastern because that's where I'm at. So we'll start Eastern time at 10 o'clock. It's going to be 9 Central, 8 Mountain, 7 Pacific, and then it'll run about an hour like we're doing right now. So it'll end at 8 Pacific, 9 Mountain, 10 Central, 11 Eastern. Okay, I was right. I thought I was about to lose it. I was like, no, I think that's wrong.
You just went from right to left and then back from left to right again
Yep,
on that.
but I got it. We're good. We're there.
You got it.
So,
all right.
Yeah, I
So-
hope everybody enjoys this episode, and
Thank you till you're better paid.